Jim Irsay had a tweet that on its face wouldn't have been an issue if I just give you the headline, which is he has his top 5 greatest NFL players of all time, and he has Jim Brown at the top, and he leaves off Peyton Manning, the guy responsible for winning him his only Super Bowl. Here's what I think upsets a lot of people. He leaves off Peyton Manning.
Well, give me the top 5. Give me the top 5 real quick.
Top 5 is 1, Jim Brown, 2, Tom Brady, 3, John Elway, 4, Deacon Jones, and 5, a former Vol, Reggie White. But to have John Elway over Peyton Manning, when you are the guy who drafted Peyton Manning and he won you a Super Bowl, and by any metric you use, Peyton Manning is a greater quarterback all time than John Elway. That's insane. Right. And so he does another tweet where he goes, no doubt Peyton, Barry Sanders, and Jerry Rice are top 10. It's just that, quote, Elway didn't have great offensive players around him till the end when he won 2 in a row, and his feet were remarkable from baseball talents. Here's what I'm gathering with Jim Irsay. He is trying to cover up the fact, something I've said for a long time, that he didn't really surround Peyton with a lot of good talent. Now, early in Peyton's career, he did when Bill Polian was there, but I think Chris took over in like 2006. And from the latter half of Peyton Manning's career in Indy, he was left with nothing. And that got exposed when Peyton Manning was forced out the back door and they drafted Andrew Luck, who was a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, but was stuck with horrible support around him in Indianapolis.
Well, wait just a second, though. I mean, they had Edgerrin James. They had...
That's first half of his career.
I understand. But they had Harrison. They had Reggie Wayne. They had Dallas Clark. Even though that's first half of his career and they may have stumbled later, I don't think a quarterback can really complain when you play with those guys for 8-ish years.
Look, I'm going to go here, and I don't like to do
it. Elway didn't have that ever.
One, I got no problem saying Dallas Clark was massively overrated. Was a massively overrated tight end, was a complete product of Peyton Manning. You could plug anybody. That was the most ultimate system player. You could have plugged anybody into that tight end role. Edgerrin James was also overrated. In case you forgot, the Colts won their Super Bowl the year after he left. And I'm going to be blasphemous right here, but I'm not so sure Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne are Hall of Fame caliber receivers. If it's not, I think they're good receivers made into Hall of Famers. Marvin Harrison was what, 5'11"?
Okay, first of all, I'll give you a little bit of that on Marvin Harrison. They had things rolling and nobody knew how to defend Peyton Manning. I actually think that Reggie Wayne was a more talented receiver and would have been a Pro Bowler, All-Pro type of guy, borderline Hall of Fame type of guy anywhere. I think as long as when I say anywhere, as long as he wasn't in a disaster situation, okay, like the Detroit Lions were back then. I don't want to say anywhere, but as long as he had a competent quarterback, I think he would have been that good. I liked Edgerrin James a lot. It surprises me you say that. Dallas Clark, I'll half agree with you on, because you had to be a strictly receiving tight end, right? I mean, Jason Witten was a great combo tight end. There, Brent Jones going back for the San Francisco 49ers, great combo tight end. But you had to absolutely just be a receiving tight end. Doesn't matter who you block. So he could go with the wrong team and be a Dallas nobody.
Okay, and you didn't even have to be a receiving mismatch like Rob Gronkowski is. You just had to have hands.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, he was a poor man's Rob Gronkowski, in my opinion. Wasn't that athletic, wasn't that good, but yes, played a similar role, if that makes sense. Okay, so here's my problem with the Irsay tweet is you do include a quarterback on there. You drafted him, and it feels like sour grapes because you didn't give him the second chance that he wanted, and Denver did. So here's what I was told about Peyton Manning before he went to Denver, that his handshake was so weak that they thought this is a very close friend of the family. Thought that he would never play football again in the year that he took off. Now, he may have done the stem cells in Europe and all that, and I think he did, and that's fine, whatever. I know that that's a political hot topic issue that I don't want to get into, but whatever, he was good enough to win another Super Bowl. So if Jim Irsay regrets that, he shouldn't, because he wouldn't have put the type of talent around Peyton Manning in Indianapolis that Denver did. because they went all out. They were one of the first teams. They said, we're going to spend now to win this thing, and we don't care what the salary cap looks like in 3 years, right? So Irsay wouldn't have done that. And to not include him on that list is just disgustingly terrible. And to include another quarterback on that list is insane. John Elway was the best prospect from top to bottom, and Peyton Manning probably wasn't on the top 100 list of best prospects at quarterback because of his physical ability. But fine, if you want to put that on there, but you can't say John Elway, because he has 2 Super Bowls, is better than Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. I'm not even sure that he's. I think it's a coin flip with him and Aaron Rodgers, because of the way Aaron fits into this time frame where you have to throw and be multiple and throw from weird angles. But yeah, I think this was very disturbing by Jim Irsay to say that. I think it was disappointing. I think it was idiotic.
Yeah, and let's not also forget this. Remember, John Elway humiliated Jim Irsay's dad. Just straight up said, I refuse to play for the Colts.
That's true.
And it was about their own. And he made the right decision, because at that time, the Colts were incompetently run because Jim Irsay had his demons. He got that from his father, who also had his demons. And I'm with you. This is sour grapes. I think I've heard some rumors that I think Jim Irsay was sour grapes, that Peyton Manning would not enter the Hall of Fame as a Colt specifically. He didn't choose a team between the Colts or the Broncos.
How did Peyton enter it? He didn't enter as a Bronco, did he?
No, he didn't enter it as a member of a team specifically. I think you can choose.
That's not as big of a deal as it is in baseball, right?
Right. I don't think it's as big of a deal as it is in baseball. But it's still one of those things where I think Irsay wanted. He wants people to remember like Peyton as a Colt, but it's like, you did force him out the back door. By the way, I don't blame him at the time for doing that. We didn't know if Peyton could throw again. And you had, by all accounts, the best prospect since John Elway and Andrew Luck and the number 1 pick. I think it makes sense at that point you go with Andrew Luck. But
no, I thought the Colts did the right thing. But again, I had the family friend who told me that he'll probably never throw a football again, that his handshake was that weak, and they thought he had something similar to what his brother Cooper had. So I don't have a problem with what the Colts did, and I don't think Peyton Manning does either for them making that move. But let's remember this. Peyton Manning is a guy that can get perturbed off the smallest things because he's so ultra competitive, kind of like Michael Jordan, and he'll never forget it. So Michael Jordan will never speak to Charles Barkley again. There are some media members that Peyton Manning will never speak to again because of a column they may have written 20 years ago. But Jim Brown, Tom Brady, John Elway, Deacon Jones, Reggie White, I'll give him some kudos for the Deacon Jones thing. Deacon Jones, they didn't count up sacks. I think Deacon Jones, I don't know why they can't do this at NFL Films. They have all the tape. I think it would be awesome, but they don't want it to make it look like the guys that they celebrate now don't have the records. Deacon Jones probably had more sacks than anybody in the NFL.
But would you say Deacon Jones was a more impactful defensive player than Lawrence Taylor?
No.
That's the thing. No. This Jim Irsay list, like Peyton Manning.
No, I would have Taylor on this list. No, I mean, okay, so Peyton Manning would be on this list because to me, he was a transformative player. He was the guy who came to the line, and it was the old freeze plays that they ran at Tennessee where you have 2 plays at the line of scrimmage, and the Omaha was telling them which play to be in. So in no particular order, you have to have Tom Brady on this list. I would have Peyton Manning on this list. So I'm going to stop at quarterbacks right there. I would have Lawrence Taylor on this list. And because that's the reason the movie Blindside was created, was because of Lawrence Taylor. Because you had to have somebody that could protect someone's blind side, and Joe Theismann got his leg broken in half. And it changed the way the game was played. As far as other guys that changed the way the game was played, I mean, that's a very short list because it is a game's game. It's not a player's game, like when LeBron James comes in and makes it positionless basketball and that sort of thing. So those are my top 3 that immediately come to my mind. I'd lean towards quarterbacks and probably have a Montana in there, and some other guys. But
that's the gold standard of quarterbacks: Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Joe Montana. Right? Those three. Like, you don't put anybody above those three.
I don't.
Yeah. No. I don't feel like you do either. I mean, maybe I would say maybe Dan Marino. I know people say Dan Marino never won a ring, but he probably had the best arm. But then I don't know how you know. I've read stories where it's kind of Dan Marino's fault he never won a ring because he fought having a running game this whole time in Miami. But in terms of raw arm talent, Dan Marino probably had the best arm talent of any quarterback ever, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I would take Marino as the best thrower, no question about it. So, and quickest released and best overall, I would take John Elway slightly because of his mobility. So Michael Orr, somebody asked me about that on the message board. Michael Orr as a left tackle was highly valued, and all left tackles were, because of Lawrence Taylor. If you watch the movie, I mean, that's the lead in. If you read the book, that's the lead in.
The movie and the book is also a lie, but yes.
Yeah, but he changed. But that was the left tackle was just another offensive lineman before Lawrence Taylor was so disruptive, and not just from breaking Joe Theismann's leg in half, but that was part of it. So, I mean, that Lawrence Taylor changed the way the game was played. Also, there wasn't a halfback. You know how you see Jacob Warren going in motion back and forth? Mm-hmm. That they didn't do that at tight end before Lawrence Taylor. The Lawrence Taylor has to be on there, no question. Deion Sanders, as I round out my top 5 slowly, is on my top 5. So right now, I'm at Peyton, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, LT, Deion Sanders. That's my 5.
In terms of impact, I could get with you on that. My thing is, like, Deion Sanders, there's always that drawback of he never tackled. And there's also the fact that, like, Deion Sanders, here's the thing we have to say with Deion Sanders. Gave up a lot of yards to elite receivers. I've seen the stats of his matchups with Jerry Rice and Michael Irvin back in the day. They always got into the 90s and 100 yards stat wise when they played him. Now, Deion Sanders, it sounds like Deion Sanders consistently tried to give cushions so he could try to get that interception.
Yeah, he got bored and he would gamble, and it was frustrating. There's no question about it, because he wanted more interceptions because people threw away from him. That would roughly be my top 5. I could probably, to be real honest with you, be talked into dropping Joe Montana for my top 5 and putting Reggie White in there. And the reason I would put Reggie White in there in front of a lot of other guys was Reggie White, to me, was as good of a run stopper as he was a pass rusher, and he was one of the best pass rushers of all time.
Yeah, he was a defensive tackle in college. So that's the funny thing. I think he was drafted as a defensive tackle, and they moved him to end because of how raw, amazing of a pass rusher he was.
Travis says only Cowboys fans and FSU guys would have Deion top 10.
Yeah, no. I feel like Deion did not do as he was a smart player in the sense that he looked out for himself in his own, and I don't blame him for doing that, but I do think that kind of came at the detriment of teams sometimes.
Well, not as often as you would think. If you watch those games, if the game was at all in question, it was obvious that Deion's guy was shut down. Like, you just flipped a switch. And then on the flip side, you had the rest of the defense that had to worry about the other receivers, tight end or whatever. When you really watch those games and soaked them in, Deion, as flashy as he is, was one of those guys. And I say this about Trooper Taylor and Bruce Pearl. A lot of flash, but a lot of substance. And I believe that with Deion. I think he was that impactful in the game. But Jimmy Hyams agrees with you. We've had this discussion before about did the Cowboys really need Deion to win that 3rd Super Bowl? I thought they did.